Okay, in this tutorial, I'm going to help you answer the question here describing the impact of an air mass arriving in the UK for a prolonged period of time. But I'm going to start off by actually looking at the 5 air masses and what their main properties and the type of weather, and then tackle the exam question that we can see down here. So the first thing I would suggest you do is write down the learning outcome. So once you've written down this learning outcome, let's just review, and you can do this through some bullet points. Let's review each of the air masses and the type of weather. So if we just examine the first part of a name of an air mass, it's either polar, as we can see here, or it's tropical, as we can see down here. Or actually one can be Arctic. Now this refers to its origin on the planet. So Arctic or polar means it's coming from a northerly region, and tropical means it's coming from the equator or an equatorial region. The second part, maritime or continental, tells us whether it's originating from an area of water or an ocean, or an area of continent or land. So if we have a quick little look, tropical continental is an air mass which comes from Africa, and that is an equatorial region, and it's a continent, it's a land. So this is a very hot air mass. It's also very dry with low levels of humidity. And it comes from the Sahara or Northern Africa. In contrast, its neighbor, the tropical maritime, is warm to hot. I would be inclined to say it's very warm without saying it's hot. The difference is it comes from the Atlantic Ocean, it's maritime, and therefore, whilst it's very warm, it's also very wet. And it's much more humid as a consequence. Moving our way around, we have the Polar Maritime. Now, this comes from a colder region because it's coming from the poles, so it's going to bring cold air. And it's maritime, so it's also going to be wet. Potentially wintertime, it might even be snowy. Arctic Maritime. Now, this is very cold. It's air coming off the North Pole. Once again, it travels across ocean, so it's maritime, and therefore it's also going to bring wet weather, in all likelihood, sleet or snow. And finally, the Polar Continental. Well, this comes from a colder region. This is actually Siberian air, comes from northern Russia. It's continental, it's coming from Russia, so it's going to be very cold but very dry air because it's continental. Right, those are the 5 air masses. So, and I've also described not just their origin, but the type of weather they bring. And that weather was described as either linked to its temperature. Is it hot, warm, or cold, or very cold? And I've also considered, is it wet or dry? Let's now have a look at applying this to one of these exam questions. So what I suggest you do now is write down the question, see if you can answer it. And then I'll have a little look at what you may have written. Okay, I assume you might have tackled this question. Now, this question could be worded in all kinds of ways. First of all, the air mass might vary. It might not say tropical continental, it might say polar maritime. Second of all, rather than summer, it might be winter. The key is the prolonged. Now, what that means is the weather arrives and it's with you for at least a few weeks, sometimes up to a month. So you get the same weather that comes with the air mass for a long period of time. Well, if we think about the one in the question, tropical continental, this means that for a long period of time, we're going to be getting, because it's summertime, hot, dry weather. Now, that can create a lot of advantages, but it can create a lot of disadvantages. So you have to pay attention to whether the question looks at advantages and disadvantages. Hot, dry weather, the advantage of that would be it would be a boom for the travel and tourism industries. It would be good for people's health because they could be getting lots of sunlight. They'd be more likely to be outside. Plant growth might benefit from having warmer weather, although you've got to counteract that with the fact that there might be a drought. We'll come back to that point later on. On the disadvantage side, you're going to have a lot more people suffering from heat stroke, a higher risk of skin cancer because people's skin might be burning. Lower winds that come with tropical continental air might lead to wind energy not doing as well. But on the plus side, solar energy would do well. The tropical continental might cause drought, which might affect farmers. There might need to be water shortages in cities, so there'll have to be bans on the use of hose pipes, for example. So you've got to consider a range of the ways that a long period of hot, dry weather could either be an advantage or disadvantage. If we flip this question and look at, let's say, a polar maritime in summer, well, that's going to be bringing quite windy, wet weather. Now, it's summertime, so it's not going to be very cold, but you've got to think about long period of continual rain. Now, there's a positive. That's going to allow the reservoirs to recharge in summertime. The windy weather is going to make sure the wind turbines turn, but of course, solar energy is going to struggle. Hydroelectric energy will benefit. Your tourism industry might struggle, though. There might even be flooding if there's a heavy rain. Okay, so that's the that air mass coming in summer. Now, what we can do is you can flip that and have winter. Now, a tropical continental air mass in winter is going to bring some extremely cold weather because it tends to bring very clear skies. So we're going to have a big drop in temperature. Polar continental will do the same, and it will be extremely cold. So continental air in winter tends to bring very clear weather, often associated with high pressure weather. So you've got to think about what would very cold or extremely cold weather be likely to bring. Okay, but the lack of any kind of rainfall that could have advantages and disadvantages. You just have to remember if it says winter, you've got to think that it is winter time. But stick to what you know about the air mass. So the starting point is knowing the typical weather that comes with an air mass. Okay, right. That is me dealt with kind of two questions there. I've dealt with the first one, which is actually describing the air masses, but second of all, looking at the impact that these air masses have if they arrive in the UK for a long period of time.